Welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable, back for our college preview. We are hot and heavy, getting close to halfway, looking at all the teams in the SEC. Last week we were getting into the East. We're going to get back to the East again on the next podcast, but tonight we are fortunate enough to flip back over to the West to hit another team from the state of Mississippi. So we're going to get both of those teams knocked out early, get some conversations about Ole Miss. And tonight we've got three folks joining me tonight. I'm your host, Shane Bailey. This podcast is kind of a fan's perspective, and so this truly is what the roundtable is all about tonight. We've got a Mississippi State guy to give a impartial evaluation of the Ole Miss.
I even wore red.
There we go. That's Blair Smyly. Welcome, Blair.
It's good to be back, Shane. I'm glad we put the actual #1 school in Mississippi. We got it over with and done first. Now we can clean up behind with this terribleness.
Going to start early and often.
Nah.
And then for Ole Miss perspective, we do have Cole Hodges. Cole, thanks for being on here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shane. Appreciate it. Hopefully we can shed some light on this, on the Ole Miss season to come.
Take care of some of these untruths that are out there floating around?
You know, whatever makes him sleep at night.
And then we got Nick Jones here from Bama Hammer. Nick,
Shane,
welcome.
I think it's very important for us to mention that I think you and I are here just to referee the fight tonight.
No,
Make
I'm
sure nothing gets too dirty.
well, Nick is probably still out of breath for sprinting 110 yards to get Nick Saban's autograph.
Yeah, I mean, I've conditioned for that multiple months in a row ever since football season ended. I mean, I was doing the process, going through all the conditioning workouts, and it was my moment. Unfortunately,
that's classic.
It didn't really, come out on the field. I was unfortunately beaten out by some 50-year-old guy, but maybe next year. There's always next year.
Yeah.
So we do this normally every week. We sit down and we're going to take a look at the week that happened, the week that's going to happen, and what we think shook out and what we liked and didn't like. But before the season gets started, we do our football previews every year. We've done these. This is our third year of having podcasts, and the third year we've done previews. And each time we've changed them up a little. So we do a different podcast every week. We do multiple podcasts as we do our previews. And so tonight we are into Ole Miss. Cole, I'll just let you get things kicked off and started and kind of give us an overview or your general thoughts on Ole Miss and their season, and then we can tail off from there and find some rat holes to hit.
Okay, sounds good. Well, as much as Mr. Smyly would probably agree with me, it is a very, very exciting time to be a fan of a team from Mississippi, especially Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Ole Miss is coming off a great year last year. A couple letdown games there with the loss to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. Fumbled that one away at the end, but picked it back up in the Music City Bowl here in Nashville, and really have fans excited. Followed up by another good recruiting class. Not as high profile as 2 years ago, but definitely filled some needs, and I think that we're poised. We have, I believe, 16 starters returning, 15 or 16 starters returning. Defense should be one of the top ones in the SEC, right up there with Alabama and Mississippi State. Offense should be good, back with some good playmakers. We lost Moncrief to the NFL. He's got a great career ahead of him if he can stay healthy with Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts. But we got Laquan Treadwell moving outside, and Quincy Adebojo moving into the starting lineup as slot receiver. Both running backs back. Bo Wallace, most seasoned quarterback, coming back. I don't know. We can talk about that a little bit later. I don't know that that's necessarily the greatest thing.
That's not saying a lot. How
Bo goes is how Ole Miss goes. I understand, but as Shane and Blair and Mr. Jones can attest, the end of the year was not Bo's finest hours by any stretch of the imagination. So he did finally come through in the Music City Bowl. I will say he played really well. So got some optimism. Got arm back to full strength. Was able to go through the full conditioning practice. But he's back. Offensive line needs some work. Defensive line should be strong. Defensive secondary should be strong, and linebackers have a handful of returning players. But we need some depth there. So the only thing I believe one of the big concerns is the kicking game. Lost a senior punter, senior place kicker. Got some freshmen, redshirt freshmen we're going to be relying on, and we need some guys to return the football. So Hugh Freeze's done a really good job. 3 years ago we're sitting on this podcast and I'm predicting us to go, win 2 or 3 games. And I wasn't a huge fan of the hire. I definitely bought in once he was there. Gave him my support. And he's done a great job and building it slowly. I think we'll have another good year. I don't necessarily think that we're going to have that huge breakout year, but I think we're going to keep contending and keep making some improvements. So I'm super excited. Can't wait for Atlanta, August 28th.
I didn't go back and look, but last year when we did this preview, do you remember what you had them record-wise?
8-4.
So
we finished 7-5, regular season.
Yeah.
So if we hadn't put up laid an egg in on Thanksgiving weekend, then maybe we would have been 8-4.
Yeah.
Got that breakthrough victory. I just I thought it was I figured I actually called the LSU victory, but I thought we'd beat A&M and lose to Texas, and certainly flipped that one around. But hey, I'll take it, man. It was an exciting ride there for Ole Miss last year. I wish the end of the year had been well, and just like we always say, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they're like a bunch of crabs. One of them starts getting better, the other one just starts climbing out of the aquarium, and the other one just pulls them back down. That's what happened last year. So we'll see. We're both on the rise. It doesn't necessarily happen all too often, so should be fun.
So you don't think a rising tide raises all ships? Then is that what you're telling me, Cole?
No.
No.
I really am not a big fan of the Tide.
I didn't even mean for that pun there. Good catch by you. Let's talk about Bo. How's he looked? I mean, he was your guy you had to rely on last year, and like you said, he hit some shaky spots towards the end, and really wasn't what you were wanting at the end of the season. Thankfully, like you said, he turned it around and had a big win in the bowl game. But what are you expecting from him, and how's he looking?
Well, let's touch on last year a little bit. I will say, not making excuses. He did have played with a hurt shoulder. Really, the last 2 years has played hurt for at least half the season. But you don't necessarily have you didn't really have a true backup. Last year Brunetti came in and could spell him a little bit. But the biggest problem, I think, with Bo the last couple of years is he's really and truly been our power running back. I mean,
yeah.
Yes, he's going to run the ball. I mean, you cannot say he's not going to run the ball. He's an effective runner, but you can't expect for him to run, 3rd and 2 and give him the ball every single time. We have to establish a run game where we have somebody like Jordan Wilkins or Jeremy Liggins coming in at quarterback, or somebody that can get you 2 to 3 yards when they touch the ball, just because they're big and they can just bust through the line. That goes back to the offensive line's got to establish itself and be able to push some people off the ball. But
Can Mathers or Walton be that guy this year?
Mathers is a tough kid. Walton's a tough kid. They're both more. I think Mathers, Middle Tennessee
Small
kid.
Still.
He's strong, but he's still small.
Yeah.
He had a couple games last year where he struggled with holding on with the ball. But he showed signs of some true greatness, and so did Walton. Walton's great catching the ball out of the backfield, some of the swing routes. I mean, I couldn't count how many touchdowns we threw little, wheel routes to him last year against Texas A&M and against, LSU and a couple other ones. But, good running backs. That's one place where if we can get the Jordan Wilkins or, like I said, Liggins coming in.
Dodson.
Wilkins is Dodson. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dodson is. We're really. I almost hate to say loaded. I mean, we're not Alabama, but we have a pretty good backfield. I mean, if one guy goes down, we're pretty set at running back. You started this whole thing out with Bo. I mean, I'm going to finish up with that. But really, I mean, the running back part of it is a big piece. But he did meet with a passing coach this year out in California to get him some work. He was able to go through the entire strength and conditioning program this year. They say he's really strong, throwing the ball really well. They say one of his biggest problems is he's almost a little too jacked. He's throwing the ball a little too overthrowing receivers a little bit right now, which sort of may worry you. But it's a timing. We run a timing offense a lot like Auburn. We just need to get the ball downfield. One of the hugest things, Blair and I have talked about this, a number of times. One of the biggest problems with our effort in the Mississippi State game was we never threw the ball downfield. We have to be able to stretch the field to open up the middle of the field for Ingram and for Adebayo and for some of the running backs coming out of the backfield, and then obviously for running lanes. So if we can do that, if we can get a couple of balls downfield, I think we'll be good. If he can stay healthy, if he can have 12 games like he did against LSU, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Who would?
That would be a good season.
Yeah. But he's he's still, if he didn't lead, I don't think he led the SEC in passing yards last year, but he was right up there. So he throws the ball a lot. He's, he threw for over 325 yards in a lot of games, and we go with him. We go with Bo. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I looked at, I think you hit. There's three things I look at Ole Miss, and none of them are to do with the defense. I think outside of maybe linebacker is where you got kind of maybe some depth issues, but defensive line and your secondary is just freaking stacked. But I think you said it there. I think the running back position, you've got to get somebody established to run the football so that Bo doesn't have to. And then offensive line, I think it's kind of what you're going to figure out now that Golson left. I think Golson leaving threw everything in a little bit of a kink. And from what I've read is it's moved this guy to guard and this guy out to tackle and this guy, so it's all of a sudden now instead of if Golson's there, nobody's actually moving. Now you've got three different people that have moved, and if somebody gets hurt, it shifts another three people. And so just the combinations are, your biggest thing. 2 years ago, I think Ole Miss I don't think they missed a start with, like, their offensive line. Like, they had, like, the freak year where you didn't get hurt at all. And so, it's one of those just lucky years that happened. So I think that's one of the things to look at is that, the running back position. And then, really, Bo, I think for Mississippi State and Ole Miss, it's kind of weird because their quarterbacks are really in the top three quarterbacks in the SEC. If you go across the board with Nick Marshall, with the most experience and probably the most potential. But it's funny because, like, Dak Prescott played 8 games last year. I mean, he didn't play 12. He played in 11, but he had this freak nerve ending that, on his non-throwing hand that sat him for 2 games and most of the Egg Bowl. He had the loss of his mother, so so you've seen him kind of, there's all this potential, and I love his temperament. Bo has got all the experience in the world, but sometimes his temperament gets the best of it. He gets too jacked. He's like Phillip Rivers except he's, Phillip Rivers kind of thrives when he gets fired up. And it seems like Bo, it negates some of his characteristics that make him good. But I think the arm is the big thing. I think him figuring out his arm, I think getting Ingram back at tight end totally changes the offense because whenever that happened last year, that made it way more predictable. And I think moving Treadwell out there, I mean, that dude's going to be a beast. And so I think offensively, I think you're going to put up a bunch of numbers. I think defensively, you're going to be good. And the other thing that Ole Miss has that I think that I liked about Mississippi State is on the schedule side. You get Tennessee and Vanderbilt in the East, and you get Tennessee at home. And we haven't really done a Tennessee preview, but I mean they're replacing everybody on both lines, and they got obviously a quarterback that can't throw it 4 feet according to their preseason practices. So, so you got to like that as an Ole Miss fan. So, it's kind of a unique situation where if both Mississippi State and the two Mississippi schools kind of live up to the hype, they both are going to get to the end of the season in the Egg Bowl with a good opportunity to really capitalize on, probably a special season.
And you touched on something real quick that I even left out. I mean, Evan Ingram, having him back is going to be a huge benefit to Bo and to the offense because, as you said, it shut down a quarter of what we did, maybe even more.
Yeah.
It cut out so much of the offense. I mean, he scored in 3 of the 4 games he played and stretched the field in others. And then behind him, one good thing is, they're working Sammy Epps, who, can play slot, can play in the slot, can play tight end. We've got some guys behind him, although they're freshmen. But Evan, talk about a surprise from the recruiting class. I mean, what a that kid's got his ceiling is up there. He's in the perfect offense for him. So it's exciting. It really is. I think in our wideouts, nobody's talking about anybody but Treadwell. You have Adebojo, who was a 4-star recruit out of Texas. It's just going to be a sophomore. Vince Sanders, who 2 years ago was the number 2 receiver, and last year, dealt with injuries and fell off, and he was the number 4 receiver. And then, you got, Markel Pack coming in as a freshman, supposed to be playing. So there's other players out there. There's going to be plenty of options for Bo. The other thing I would like to see, along with Ingram, coming back, is somebody nobody ever talks about, but Jordan Holder last year, out of nowhere, especially the first couple games, first half of the season, he was a great possession receiver. Got a big catch when he needed, little Wes Welker type. So want to see who steps up and turns into our possession guy, because I think Treadwell is going to definitely be our big play guy. And, it's just going to be fun to see this thing develop. It really is.
Yeah, and this is something I want to hit on too, guys. I mean, obviously, Cole, I think you hit on a really good point. The fact that, Ole Miss's upside is going to really be determined on what kind of season Bo Wallace can have. I mean, you look at it, he was well over 3,000 yards last year. I think the big thing for him was taking care of the football. We saw him in some of the key games, especially just being careless sometimes. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have to force a throw and it may get picked, it may get tipped at the line or something, but there was just some inexcusable throws that he made. And with the wide receiver core that he had last year, that's not really something that you would like to see out of your quarterback. But you've got Treadwell coming back, who, obviously is a great talent, and I think has the potential to be the best, if not one of the best, receivers in the SEC. But like you said, he's got a good supporting cast. I think it's very interesting with what Hugh Freeze does with Jalen Walton, kind of a shorter guy, a smaller running back, but he's got the speed out of the backfield, and he's the second leading receiver coming back from last year after you dropped Moncrief and Logan, I think it was. So Ole Miss was kind of my surprise team last year. I think we talked about on the podcast. I was pretty high on Ole Miss, especially going into the LSU game and going into a couple other games. It was mainly because of their offense, but seeing some of these 4 and 5 stars develop on defense, I think it's very interesting to see Kimdichie actually defining his role in the defense. There was a lot of question marks coming into the season last year, whether he would be playing end or tackle, and he's kind of found his place and he's ready to go. And, you look at Pruitt coming back, and there's just a lot of guys that don't get much credit that really make that team and make them they're kind of a good defense by committee. There's not too many flashy guys on the outside. Obviously, you got Kimdichie, you've got Pruitt, a couple hard hitters. But it's not a team that we're really talking about could be one of the best defenses in the SEC, but they're very solid and probably will be able to compete with the LSUs and Mississippi States and, if they had a great game, possibly the Alabamas this season.
Go ahead.
No, go on, Cole.
I completely agree. The Pruitts and the Kimdichis, even Denzel, had the year last year where it was a little, lag because of injuries and not as good as his redshirt freshman year. But he's come back. He will be suspended the first game for off-season issues, but he's back in good standing with the team, so he'll be back for the Vanderbilt game. He's running a lot with the first team, even though he's not playing the first game. But you got Sedarius Bryant, at linebacker, who was a tackling machine last year. You got Detarian Shackelford, DT, as the old folks like to call him, back for his sixth year of eligibility. And then Isaac Gross, probably one of the fastest guys off of the line, small frame, but just takes double teams. I mean, I'm really excited to see him and Kimdichie next to each other. You've got a lot of good guys, and then on the outside, you got Derek Jones, who's going to be, probably battling for one of the cornerback positions. Hendrick Collins, Tony Connor. The guy you never talked about for the last year's recruiting class, who was probably one of the most athletic, one of the most fun people to watch. And how is it, the first play of your college career, you intercept a pass against Vanderbilt? I mean, talk about that was awesome. So he's going to be great playing the Husky position, go down. He had a great Music City Bowl, playing against the run, playing against the pass, and the backups in the defensive backfield. I think it'll be interesting to me to see how the year progresses and to see how Hugh Freeze and the Ole Miss defensive coaches use Cody Pruitt and see if they bring him down to outside linebacker sometime to support against the run and put C.J. Hampton in. The more they get more comfortable with C.J. Hampton, because I've heard nothing but good things from him out of camp. So, and Pruitt talks a lot of good things about him. So the defense, I have a lot less question marks. I think you said that a minute ago, Blair.
And you actually mentioned, Cole, what people don't realize, Kimdichie playing the middle with a guy like Isaac Gross. Isaac Gross is a guy that if you can give him a sliver of space, he's a smaller inside player that when he gets two guys on him and he doesn't have space, he's very easy and is ineffective. But if you've got a Kimdichie that is going to garner maybe a double team or second attention, if you give that guy, give him a sliver of space, then he becomes really productive for you. I think that's where Kimdichie is going to be. It's the same thing at Mississippi State with Chris Jones.
Yeah.
Chris Jones says that he's a defensive end at heart, but he's going to be playing, 75% of his snaps, and he may get out on the end, and Kimdichie may have some packages where he gets on the end. But they're going to dominate inside because you can't, Kimdichie is, 285, 290. Chris Jones is 310 pounds. You can't, and they're so athletic and quick at that size. They're complete mismatches on guards and centers inside. It's just if you can get that rush up the middle against quarterbacks, it's just going to open up everything.
And one guy we didn't even talk about,
Channing Ward.
C.J.
Johnson, yeah. Channing Ward, I forgot. He's no longer.
And Channing Ward, now they moved him back to defensive end, and even considering redshirt new if they keep the depth, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's how much depth we got on the defensive line right now. So we'll see what happens. Be fun.
Man, you talk about two players that came out of the state of Mississippi back-to-back years, and Clay Evans that went to Mississippi State as a surefire number one defensive tackle, 5-star, and then Channing Ward that basically was a can't-miss end from North Mississippi, and both of them have just been, Clay Evans is in some place in the middle of Georgia at some little small school, not even at Mississippi State, and Channing Ward was at, third-string tight end until they moved him back to...
Yeah, third-string tight end in spring practice.
Just another case of kids, just because they get the height, it's all about development.
one of the overall themes, Cole, and tell me if I'm off base here, is that it really goes back to Freeze's recruiting and what he's been able to provide from a depth standpoint. Because I mean, if you look at what you had on the field last year, you were a very young team. You asked a lot from some 4 and 5-star guys like Kimdichie to come out and be an impact player from the beginning, and in a lot of instances they were. Now you've given them all that experience, and you back that up with another great recruiting class that's able to come in and fill even more holes and to give more room to move players around like you've just talked about. Now all of a sudden you have the depth to be able to go that 2 and 3, 4-man deep in certain positions to give you that comfortable ability to change up packages with confidence. Would I be wrong in that assessment?
No, I don't think so at all. I think it is nice. The biggest thing right now, we have, you have your starters on defense. You have you're constantly rotating in defensive linemen. Your defensive backs, you've got to rotate a couple of those guys. Your linebackers. If you're too deep, Mississippi State, one of their biggest attributes right now, I think this is, the first time in a long time that Mullen's got them, they're too deep across the board. They may be 2 and 3 deep on defense. Yeah. Their defense is stacked. And Ole Miss is getting to that. We're not completely there. Our depth is still
I was going to say, you actually could use another recruiting class. Like the thing that Ole Miss has is they have a top. I mean, they had a top tier class 2 years ago. And guys, I mean, if you follow ESPN's SEC blog, they talk about freshmen and they talked about seniors and playbacks, but they had their top 10 true sophomores. And then they had a list of 5 that didn't make the list. So they had their top 15. Ole Miss had 4 of them. I mean, you had Kimdichie, you had Connor, you had Tunsil, and you had Treadwell. I mean, those are 4 elite players that have started and impacted day one. And I think that's what is making up for, because, I mean, people don't realize what Houston Nutt left that freaking place with. From a depth standpoint, and I think if you got Hugh Freeze in a room, he would tell you that, hey, I'm on the offensive line, I'm 2 injuries away from really having some issues, and another recruiting class. I think next year you'll see even reap the benefits. The problem there is that you got to come back in with a quarterback. What helps you now is that you've got a quarterback this season. But yeah, it's just the top end talent. I think that's why people see. The thing about Mississippi State is that, they've got a ton of depth, and their coaching staff has proven that they can develop when they get them there. But they're from a star or from a rating or from a top-end talent, Ole Miss has got basically a higher ceiling with the players that they have from an impact standpoint right now.
Yeah, injuries are going to play a lot to do. Going to have a lot to do with it. It's we've got some depth there, but we are a year. I agree with you. I mean, we're probably a year or 2 away from being exactly where we need to be. Hopefully just a year, because these sophomores are going to be juniors next year, and they ain't going to be around when they're seniors. So they need. We need to reload. That's another topic for another podcast.
Well, I got something for you, Cole. And I don't know if we even discussed this, Shane, when we talked about Mississippi State. And I know one of the highlights I talked about was if Dak Prescott played 12 games, I feel really confident that we're going to win, 8 to 10 ball games. Bo Wallace, I feel pretty confident that way. If he plays 12 games, what happens if he gets hurt? Because it's fortunately for State last year, they threw a true freshman in there that they've got some help, and they've got some other kids that I think fit the system. But you've got Kincaid, is that right?
You got Devontae Kincaid and Ryan Buchanan. Pretty much number 2 right now. Kincaid's more of a they're trying to quote unquote shed the label, but he's the multi-purpose mobile quarterback from Dallas. Buchanan is the pocket passer. A little bit taller, a little bit more prototypical pro-style quarterback. I think both of them would do fine, but they're not Bo Wallace. And we just talked about how we go where Bo goes, and sometimes Bo can be erratic. I mean, you put a redshirt freshman in, they got a lot of talent around them, but they're going to be, swimming in the deep end. So it's going to be interesting. I agree. Last year Bernetti wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but at least we knew if Bo went down, he could come in for a couple series, maybe even a couple games, and we could get through it. He played really well in spots in big games. It'll be interesting. I hope after I hope we get through Boise and Vandy, we get back home and we have a couple cupcakes before the Alabama game. Well, I take that back. Not cupcakes. We have Lafayette. So it's not exactly a cupcake, but Memphis. We do have Memphis. So maybe we can get some work for our number 2.
Man, you talk about a scary, for a non-conference game. You're talking about a Mississippi State guy coaching that team that's been successful for the last
it's Monroe.
3 years, huh?
Isn't it Monroe? Louisiana Monroe.
No, I think it's Lafayette.
You're right. I think.
Yeah, I think it's Hudspeth.
Yeah, it is.
And if that's the case, that's the scary thing about it, because you never know with that guy.
And they've talked about that.
Now, one good thing. I mean, you're talking about the injury and Bo being healthy. The one good thing is, from what I've seen, he's also put on some weight too. Is that not correct?
He has.
He's getting bigger. So I mean, if you're expecting him to not run as much, get some help in the backfield, and when he does run, he's going to have a little more weight on him to be able to take that pounding. Unless it's a freak injury, you expect that there's a good opportunity that he's going to be healthy for you. I mean, that's the what-ifs of college football. But when you're coming into a season that you've had a quarterback that's been injured, it's encouraging, at least I would think, if I were having this quarterback, to see him coming in not only healthy but having added more weight, especially even since the spring he's put on almost close to 20 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
go.
Well, I was going to tell you, Cole, you may want to throw out this. You mentioned Jeremy Liggins, and a lot of people probably don't know that, but Jeremy Liggins was a quarterback at Lafayette County, right, in Oxford, in high school, and actually spurned Ole Miss downtown one night in a nice little revealing that he was going to go to LSU to play quarterback at 270 pounds. And he lasted, I don't know, he didn't even enroll into LSU. He didn't even get qualified and went to a junior college and is now back at Ole Miss. And this guy's, 300 pounds, close to it?
He's over 300 pounds. I can't remember exactly what he reported at. He played tight end, quarterback, and defensive line.
He is, and he probably runs a 4.6?
He's
4.7?
ridiculously athletic as hell.
So he's Jared Lorenzen from.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, wait, he would make Jared Lorenzen from an athletic standpoint it's like unbelievable, Shane. He played high school football at 260 pounds as a quarterback, and he was unbelievable athletic, and they knew he was going to grow, but I just kind of heard this whole snippet about Ole Miss basically being able to bring him into a goal line package. Some of those things where they're inside the 5 where, at 300 pounds, he's able to run the offense from that standpoint and be able to kind of barrel in. So if you think about what Ole Miss is lacking is, a runner that is, they brought in Kim Dichie for crying out loud against Mississippi State, and had one successful play, and then they kind of ran back at it, and he thought he was a running back and was trying to juke people, but they just didn't have the size and the bulk to get that running game going, and so I think that's going to be a key thing that might be a little bit of an option that's available.
No, I agree. Nick, Jeremy Liggins. Yep. Go, Nick.
I was just going to say, rounding out this topic, it's kind of really interesting for me. I've never thought about this, but if you think about it, this might be a time where which this isn't a bad thing to have from an Ole Miss standpoint at all, but you kind of look at the Hugh Freeze era and you kind of think that you've grown and developed just a little too quickly. I mean, last year we were looking at, obviously we got Laramie Tunsil, all these big-name 4- and 5-star recruits coming in. We were really hoping, at least from an Ole Miss standpoint and from my prediction standpoint as well, that they were going to produce, and they ended up doing pretty well. And set what was an 8-5 season with the bowl game, pretty solid. But I think Blair, you and Cole, what you were saying, that the talent and the depth is really skin deep, that could come back to bite you in the SEC. But at the same time, I mean, just think about where you could be if this talent wasn't performing like at pretty much the highest level that they could be right now. I mean, you ask a bunch of freshmen and sophomores to go out there and win you 8 games in the SEC West. It's a tough task, but they did it last year, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do this season.
That's right, and I saw another poll come out today, Shane, with Texas A&M and the freaking top 25. It's the biggest crock of crap ever. I don't understand it. It's terrible.
It's recruiting. It's recruiting, and it's I don't agree with it whatsoever. But,
they were 8-4 last year with the three best offensive players ever.
I understand. It's just, it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing. People keep putting USC and keep putting Notre Dame in the top 25. I'm sorry. It's historical data. I mean, I don't know. USC might be a top 5 team. I have no idea what USC is going to be like, but it's sort of silly. I mean, and then,
Do they even have players at USC?
I can't even believe. Half of me thinks. I mean, most of the time, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, we got to be 6-0 before we even get a vote in the top 25.
Yeah. Well, Ole Miss doesn't. Ole Miss has got more stay there than Mississippi State.
Well, I mean,
but you got the name at least. You got like all the pretty girls.
It's like those Kentucky Wildcats and getting all these first place votes in the basketball top 25.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all,
they're well deserved.
I mean, talk about taking this thing off the rails, Shane. But I mean, this whole I had to mute freaking Matt Jones for crying out loud. He's talking about basketball over in freaking Puerto Rico nonstop on Twitter. I'm like, my God, people, it's 3 weeks from football season. Stop talking about summer basketball. For crying out loud.
We hang banners at Rupp Arena. That's all.
That's right.
He's commenting about their, hey, look at they're wearing today. This is the jerseys for today. I'm like, who cares about jerseys? It's freaking Kentucky. They're playing against Puerto Rico.
That's what gets the clicks. I mean, if you're a Kentucky fan, football's not exciting. You want your 6 or 7 wins and get your bowl game and be happy with that. You
have Paul Bunyan on your team in Matt Elam.
Isn't he just monster?
Y'all should just be. They should literally have 60,000 people at practice every day to see the guy.
He's a work of art. Was he 6'5", 370?
No, man, he's like 7'9" and like 480, right?
The legend grows.
Yeah, that's what. At least somebody told me that.
It's like 2 Jared Lorenzens.
Yeah.
The first non-basketball person that Kentucky actually stole from Alabama.
He's a Kentucky boy.
I know.
Yeah, I know. And he still didn't go to Alabama. It's crazy.
Talk about Nick Saban, man. That dude, he can't get anybody in Mississippi anymore, can he?
No, he really can't.
Although he did get a commitment today for an offensive tackle, but
which one?
Some Davis kid for 2016.
Yeah, well, again, recruiting is another topic.
Radon Davis or something. I don't know.
Let's kind of switch gears a little bit and stick with Ole Miss and look at their upcoming schedule. We've hinted at some of the games, but there's still a lot we haven't touched on. They do kick the season off in Atlanta at the Chick-fil-A Classic? Is that what they call it?
The Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic, Thursday night edition.
Thursday night edition.
Go to Chick-fil-A, get yourself a large drink. Put it in your trophy case.
Seriously, you got to think Chick-fil-A is going, man, this is a really bad deal, wasn't it? Boise is supposed to be better.
West Virginia is supposed to be better.
Yeah.
Hey,
anyway.
You know what? I'm super excited about it because...
honestly, would it affect the eyeballs watching that program? Maybe a little bit.
You know what? It would affect.
Go look at what the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic has had like the last 5 years.
Yeah, it would have affected the eyeballs 2 or 3 years ago when we were supposed to play them.
Yeah.
So when they were Kellen Moore and don't get me wrong, I'm glad we're playing them now, but it would have been fun playing them back then. Even though we were awful, at least Jeremiah Masoli would have been throwing the ball around against him or something.
Man, talking about smoking tree.
Yeah. So, yeah, but, hey, starting the season out in 2 straight NFL stadiums, getting these boys ready for the coming years.
Yeah, I've got a whole ball with. We're going to get to game 2. I've got a whole thing on that. That's like the dumbest thing Vandy's ever done. I mean, good gravy, people.
Yeah, well, Boise State.
Hey, let's play in front of 8,000 Ole Miss fans. No, let's just move it 7 miles down the road and play in front of 25,000 Ole Miss fans.
Sounds awesome. Before we get to that, Boise State, I think we opened as a 10-point favorite. We may be 9 down to 9 now, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think we'll win by a little bit.
You're calling the 24-point win, aren't you?
I want to so bad, but no. I think it'll probably be a little closer. Who knows? Everybody gets their jitters out.
Nick, what do you give them?
I don't know. I think 10 is kind of low. I mean, that probably will end up being a solid betting line, but, I mean, I'm thinking at least 2 touchdowns for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking like 34-10.
It'll make for a good night for me in Atlanta. So that's fine.
Nice, man.
It'd be nice. Nice 2 days off from the banking world.
It's good stuff, man. Was that Saturday night?
To Thursday night.
Oh, you going? Oh, it's on Thursday night.
Yeah, Thursday night.
We were just talking about the Chick-fil-A
kickoff classic. Sorry.
Started on Thursday.
So, how many games are on Thursday? No wonder they picked Ole Miss in Boise because there's like 18 games that night now.
Yeah,
South Carolina? Then
South Carolina and A&M play. Vanderbilt plays. Vanderbilt
UMass
plays
or somebody, right?
Yeah, Temple,
that's who it is.
Yes.
See, that's why we need the SEC network. We got too many games. We can't even. We don't even have enough places to play them on now. So.
I know the Fighting John Cheneys.
Yeah.
So.
John Cheneys.
All right, Blair.
So,
tell us what you think about LP Field. So, Vanderbilt decides to.
That's the dumbest thing ever.
At the Titan Stadium, LP Field.
I mean, just ridiculous. I mean, why do you want to take one of your games? First of all, it would be one thing if you had a fan base that was willing to, that could, like if it's inclement weather and they're going to have to walk from their covered parking spot into an open air stadium, they're not going to go. That's just Vanderbilt fans because they're all like 62 and they're mad at everybody. But I mean, I don't understand the whole LP Field thing. Let's take a game away from our own home stadium that we've spent 3 years creating an environment that we have literally.
He's so mad we lost him. I love it.
So, I mean, I think it's the dumbest thing ever because, I mean, I've got 3 guys I work with that are Ole Miss grads. I mean, dude, they called up the first day. They've got like 2 boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, like freaking sweet boxes. I'm just like, what is Vanderbilt doing, man? I mean, they just literally said, come on, man, let's just bring 20,000 Ole Miss fans.
They got to pay for the new salary of the head coach and the new facility somehow, don't they, Blair?
Man, that's really dumb. I don't get it.
I don't understand it either. They're supposed to, trying to make a day for Nashville for Vanderbilt fans.
Well, that would be good.
I mean, it just, they picked the wrong.
Yeah, bring Northwestern.
Get somebody else. Yeah, exactly.
Bring somebody that doesn't have fans. I mean, this is one of Ole Miss's outside of maybe Memphis. It's one of the largest alumni in Middle Tennessee. I mean, it's just, oh man, I'm just like.
But here's the crux of that whole conversation, Blair. And we've talked about this before about Nashville and Vanderbilt. There's a huge contingent of every SEC program in Nashville.
That's why you don't play an SEC game outside your home stadium.
Yeah.
That's a home game. That's like Kentucky going, let me go play this, I don't know, at Murray State or something. I mean, come on.
Let's go play Western Kentucky at LP Field.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Because that's a different deal. But I don't know, man. I just think it's a really stupid move by Vanderbilt. How much are they getting paid?
I don't know, but I'm just happy.
It's not enough.
I'm just happy because it's going to be a lot nicer being in that stadium than it would be in that hot box that I was standing in last year. So.
And tailgating is a little easier.
It is a lot easier, so it'll be fun.
I mean, that's in Vanderbilt. It's hard to tailgate.
It is very hard to tailgate at Vanderbilt.
Well, they did a pretty good job. Well, they've done a pretty good job. I went to a game where I don't know if I went to a game. Yeah. Was it the game where they actually had the road there that they have all the
they
big
still have it. They still have it.
Yeah.
They've
But you can't set up your own little spot and tailgate is what you're saying.
No.
It's not
so
like
it
the
should
Grove or the Junction or anything like that.
It should be better at LP Field. It'll be more of an NFL type, tailgate, but it'll be fun. Yeah. I don't know. I'm interested. Yeah, I'm interested to see, what Vanderbilt's going to look like, but we'll probably. The hard thing is we never play good against Vanderbilt. I know we won last year at the end. We never play good against Vanderbilt.
Well, this will be a good game for you to figure out where your offensive line is, because Vanderbilt's got some players on defense, and it's what Derek Mason does.
Yes.
So you'll be able to kind of see, because that's the whole thing with Freeze's offense is it's all about tempo and timing and all that stuff. And if you can get some pressure, especially up in Bo Wallace's face, you can throw off that stuff and you can kind of stymie them for a little bit. But I think that's where people are going to underestimate. That I think the type of athlete that James Franklin brought there the last 3 years will actually show. I just don't know on offensively. They're changing a lot offensively. But I'll be interested to see what Derek Mason looks like on defense.
I think it's going to be it's probably going to be like a 20 to, maybe a 20-10 game or something like that. I mean, I think we pull out the victory, but I don't think it's going to be high scoring.
I think like a 28-17 or something.
Maybe, but I think we get a victory there.
I'm gonna think it's going to be a little higher than that. I'd say 35-28.
There you
go. Still close.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be much more than a touchdown victory either way, but I'm going to give it to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the last 2 years, the team that won had the win and play within a minute and a half, with a minute and a half left in the game.
You all stole it from Vanderbilt last year.
God, what are you, man? That was unbelievable.
They stole it from us the year before.
Yeah. They stole it from themselves last year. Oh, he's going to walk out of bounds. Oh, well, no, he's not.
Yeah.
It's like, good gravy.
Nick?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be around a 10-point game. I'm looking at 24-14. I can kind of see Ole Miss stuttering a little bit on offense against Vandy, but I think the biggest question marks for Vandy are probably on the offensive side of the ball, losing Jordan Matthews and having some inexperience at quarterback. So I think it's a good win for Ole Miss. I mean, knocking out that first conference game, already starting out 1-0, and then kind of like we said before, you've got not an easy team coming up in Louisiana Lafayette next. So
let's look at that next one. Keep going with that one, Nick. What do you think?
They were the perennial favorite in the Sun Belt last year. I think they were. I don't know too much about them, but all I know is they're pretty darn good. And Blair, I think you were talking about, that they've got a former, Mississippi State coach, so you might know more about them.
I mean, you're in Alabama, so just kind of give you a little bit of history. Mark Hudspeth's the one that won all the national championships at North Alabama. And when Mullen came on, he was a head coach there in Division II for a long time. But he is originally from Mississippi. He grew up a State fan. But when Mullen came, Mullen got him as his offensive coordinator. So he was there before Les Kenny took over the offensive coordinator position before Les Kenny left last year. So, but he took that Lafayette job. And if you follow recruiting, especially when I follow recruiting in Mississippi, and Cole could probably contest to this as well, he's definitely dipping into Louisiana and Alabama and getting some of those guys, kind of like a Southern Miss used to do, a little bit of kind of get some of these guys and develop them. But he is a very, very, very successful coach. He is always going to be prepared. You saw it in the bowl game. He also benches about 400 pounds. He's pretty much an animal, but he's a pretty big competitor. So going to Ole Miss, going back into Mississippi, that'll be a very he'll have that team ready to play. And I don't know much about them this year. I think their quarterback is not. I don't think the season quarterback they've had. I can't remember if he's coming back this year or not. So, but I don't really know much about him. I just know that he'll have a tough game plan. It'll be a tough day. They'll win. Ole Miss will win the ball game, but I think it'll be closer than what people want to give them credit for.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
go on, Cole.
I'm actually going to go a little bit different. I think that a lot of people are going to be talking about Louisiana Lafayette and how they should be a tough opponent. And Hugh Freeze is going to have them jacked and ready to play. First home game. And they're going to come out there and probably win by 17. So,
yeah. I mean, if you look at what everybody's projecting, where Ole Miss is going to end up, if you're going to get to 9-3 or 10-2, this game's a definite win.
Oh yeah.
It might be close and it might be a tougher battle than Ole Miss wants because of who the opponent is, but I'm going to have to give them a win by at least 10.
Sorry, guys, I'm making a move.
That's all right. You kicked out of the bedroom.
But I guess the next one on tap is the Chucky Mullins Day in Oxford, Mississippi. So I don't know if y'all saw this, but against Memphis, we're gonna have the team's gonna wear special 38 helmets, which is pretty nice. I know it doesn't seem much, but it's 25-year anniversary of the incident with Chucky Mullins, the Vanderbilt game. So I think Memphis is probably our easiest opponent on the schedule, and that goes along with saying that we are playing Presbyterian this year, so Memphis is going to be pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to be a good day. So we can pretty much call that and say we're going to be 4-0 going to play Alabama.
I agree.
I do too. I tell you, to throw another plug in, we're talking about the SEC network, and they've done a good job with those SEC storied deals, but they're going to have one on the Chucky Mullen with Gaines that's here locally for Vanderbilt, which was the tight end that he hit. And if you've never seen really his story behind it, it's going to be a really cool piece to watch. I'm looking forward to it. He goes 3 times a year: Christmas Day, Chucky Mullins' birthday, and the anniversary of the hit. And he drives to Alabama to where his grave is, sits for 4 hours and cleans his grave and talks to him. He's been doing it for the 25 years since the incident. He has a real sense of, I guess he's never really dealt with it, but it's been a big part of his life. So he leaves his kids, his wife, everything on Christmas morning and drives to Alabama to go do that. So it's a pretty emotional deal. But I've seen the story, but I heard it's going to be a really cool piece. So I'm looking forward to that one. I mean, growing up in Mississippi, that's 25 years ago, man. That's just
it's crazy.
It's just like it happened yesterday, man. That was awful. Great piece. That's going to be a good day.
It's going to be a good. It's going to be a really good day.
For you that day.
I'm pretty sure he's getting inducted into. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. I think he's getting the. I can't remember what they said, if he was getting the highest athletic honor at Ole Miss. He's getting inducted into some special Hall of Fame at Ole Miss. So it's going to be a big day. They're going to make a big weekend out of it. So it'll be fun to watch.
Now you get to back that up and go. Now do you have no bye week? You go straight to host Alabama the week after that.
Yeah, that's right. So Herb Street and the boys will be in the Grove for the first time ever. I'm just kidding. Probably not.
Somebody might be. That might be we'd have to look at the overall schedule. But we were talking about this. Was it two podcasts ago about how the SEC is going to have their own crew?
It's sort of a running joke between Ole Miss fans that if we're undefeated playing Alabama early in the year, that game day is coming to the Grove. hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So not looking forward to that happening, even if we're undefeated. But I think we're going to play Alabama well. I mean,
You're what, top? You're 19 preseason?
19 preseason. Alabama's what, number 2, number 3 in most people's polls.
Depending on how the top 25 goes, you could easily be. You could, if you go 4-0, you're going to be top 15.
Yeah. So we'll see.
And the chance for top 10. I mean, outside chance. Lots of things would have to happen. But.
Here's my take on it. If you look at the game last year, defensively in the first half of last year's game, and really, except for 2 plays in the second half, Ole Miss played Alabama pretty well. The problem is when you get into Alabama territory 6 times and don't score because you go for it on 4th down because you're trying to prove to your team that you're willing to gamble and you believe in them, it's sort of deflating. You know,
well, you can just do what Mississippi State and Dan Mullen do against LSU and Alabama, and that's just go completely more conservative, and you'll make you want to punch the screen. So just either way, just pick your poison.
You know, it's interesting.
Who's that high school coach that ran the numbers and goes for it every time on 4th down and never punts, never goes for a field goal, always goes for 2? You've heard about that story, right?
I don't know. Was he a Dallas Carter?
I don't know. He's a math guy, and statistically, he looked at it. He's like his odds are better to go for it every time on 4th down, no matter what, and always to go for 2 instead of kick the extra point.
Well, in Freeze's defense, I didn't disagree with some of them. I mean, you might as well, go for it a couple of times. It just, Alabama was just jacked for that game, wanting to shut everybody up because people had picked Ole Miss to beat them.
They did, man.
I think that was probably one of the better defensive performances Alabama had all year long. We just get lucky enough to play them that day. So it was. Nick, you watched it from the other perspective. What do you think?
I kind of joined the bandwagon in saying, I don't think I picked Alabama to lose that game, but I definitely, felt like that was kind of a dark horse game. And I'll tell you what, guys, I've been to, a lot of Alabama games over my, lifetime, and I've never seen, and this is kind of, especially in the Saban era, but I mean, in general, any Alabama team, I've never seen any Alabama team more hyped to play kind of a less meaningful game that wasn't an Alabama LSU or an Alabama Auburn game. And that was probably one of the most impressive atmospheres that I've been a part of outside of an Alabama LSU or an Alabama Auburn game. So definitely wasn't a good time to catch Alabama at home. And I really thought that Ole Miss's pacing was going to give Alabama a lot more trouble, especially with the inexperience at defensive line and kind of the slower guys that we had at defensive line last year. But the game plan was pretty solid, and like you said, I mean, Hugh Freeze took some risks last year, and not too many of them worked out, and kind of demoralized Ole Miss in that respect.
So do you give them the win?
I definitely give them the win, but I think it's not going to be a 25-0 shutout this year, and Alabama hasn't played too well at Ole Miss in the past couple of years. So I don't know. I'm looking at a 10 to 14 point win.
Cole?
No, I think it'll be pretty close. It'll probably be less than 10, but I believe Alabama will win.
It's in Ole Miss, right?
Yes.
It's in Oxford. We have big wins in us. Don't get me wrong, but Alabama's just not the team you pick Ole Miss to beat. You pick them, beat them 2 times in 13 years or however many it's been, and you've never beaten Saban.
I'm looking at the schedule. If you have to be in the SEC West, you guys have a pretty favorable schedule. You get Alabama and Auburn at home.
Yeah, the problem is that you get that 5-game stretch, right?
Yes.
Don't you have like the big?
Yeah, Alabama, A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn. So, Tennessee's not terrible, terrible, come back home. But I know we've talked about joking about A&M, but playing at Kyle Field's not going to be fun. But I think I don't know. Blair, did you give us a prediction on the Alabama Ole Miss game?
Yeah, that's a loss.
Safe to say that we're going to lose.
Yeah.
Well, A&M, taking the reins from Shane a little bit here. Kyle Field, like I said, it's not going to be a fun place to play, but I think that A&M is going to have some issues at quarterback figuring out who's their guy. They've got some talent, but I think our team is ticked for losing 2 straight games to A&M in the last minute. And I think we come together on the road and pull out a big road victory.
I think I'm still mad that Texas A&M is getting all the love, and so I'm going to pick them to destroy y'all in Kyle Field, and so I'm going to count that as a loss for Ole Miss. It's your first time there, man. It's like it's half constructed. You don't even know what to do. There's going to be dirt everywhere. It's going to be crazy.
That's fun.
Nick?
With the question marks that Texas A&M has had on the defensive side of the ball in the past, and like Blair talked about losing in the past, possibly the top 3 offensive players from last year in the SEC. I don't know. I mean, I've got Ole Miss winning this game. I think it's going to be an interesting venue, obviously, for a first time for Ole Miss, but I think they pull it the win.
I'm giving them the win too. I think everybody's going to be I don't know why, but I feel like they're going to be surprised at A&M's defense. I saw marks of improvement as the season went on, especially late in the season. They had some flashes. I think they're going to turn that defense around. They're going to have to if they're going to be successful and warrant the rating they've got, their preseason rating right now. And I look at where I'm going to give them losses. I know where I've got that number in my head, and to get that number, they're going to have to pull off this win here.
Texas A&M's not going to. They're not going to finish better than 12th in the SEC in defense. They're going to be terrible. Just saying. I'm disagreeing, Shane.
That's okay. We don't always agree.
I know.
But when we do, we drink Dos Equis.
That's right.
Tennessee, you get them at home as well.
Well, Tennessee is an interesting cat. A lot like Ole Miss was last year. Hype on the freshman recruiting class. It'll be interesting to see if their recruiting class is all sorted out by the time they play Ole Miss. Last time Tennessee came to Oxford, Dexter McCluster went crazy. But the big thing it comes down to is offensive line and defensive line for Tennessee. I mean, offensive line especially. If they don't have their offensive line figured out, then our defensive line is going to wear them out. I think homecoming coming back. I think we get the victory, but it's not going to be super. It's not going to be as easy as a homecoming victory should be.
I think you're going to get the win as well. For Tennessee, it's going to bode well for them that they're getting you a little bit later in the season. Because like Blair said, I mean, they're replacing their entire, not just some, but their entire offensive and defensive line. That's a lot to have to figure out and become gelled and play in the SEC and be successful. I don't care who you are. I mean, at least with your sophomores this year, the freshmen last year, Cole, with Ole Miss, they had some experience surrounding them. They weren't out there by themselves. I mean, this is basically an entirely brand new team on the offensive side and the defensive side that's going to have to learn how to play in the SEC. I don't care what kind of talent you have. That's just going to take time. And I don't see them, when you're going to play a quality opponent like Ole Miss, be able to withstand that for a full 4 quarters. Blair, Nick?
I think, I mean, like I said, Tennessee, they're replacing both lines. They got quarterbacks that can't throw it 4 feet. So I think Butch Jones is going to have them ready to play, and I think they're going to beat Ole Miss at Ole Miss. I'm going to take an L.
Why did we even show up for this if we're just going to lose every game?
I know it's a 3-game losing streak. I got some other stuff going down the road here, but yeah, you're on a 3-game losing streak. Everybody's kind of jumping off, and I'm willing to bet that Bo got hurt at some point.
We failed to mention that before we
Yeah,
gave
sorry.
us 3 straight losses. Okay.
Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got them winning this game, but the saving grace for Ole Miss this year, they may still lose to the same Texans. I think that kind of happening. But last year, if you look at their schedule breakdown, you've got Texas, Alabama, Auburn, or at Texas, at Alabama, at Auburn, versus Texas A&M, and then versus LSU. I mean, that's a heck of a 5-game schedule right there. And at least you've got Tennessee breaking up Texas, A&M, and LSU games this year. So I've got them winning on homecoming, but Butch Jones could have the team hyped this year. I mean, it's not going to be an easy homecoming win, but I think they pull it off.
All right, then they're going to go at the Swamp, and I'm going to give you a loss. It's just you're going to be coming in with 1 loss, headed to Baton Rouge. Good chance that might be a night game. That's just such a hard place to play, and they reload every year.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, LSU, we play them good every year, I believe. Last
And
year
there's
we
some
played.
revenge in their mind too.
Yeah, I know. Last year, we played them with our second team and beat them. Thank God, Titans' second team quarterback, threw 4 picks. But, LSU, Baton Rouge is a hard place to pull one out. It's very hard. We played them tough the last 2 years. But I just have a feeling Les Miles is going to have them ready to play. It probably will be at night. And, I just don't know that we can pull it out. I think it'll be close. Close, but I believe LSU will probably pull it out. They'll have a quarterback figured out by then. They'll always have Fournette will probably run for 150 yards. So we'll see what happens.
Nick,
Yeah, I think the fact that this is kind of a mid-season game, kind of getting into the latter half of the SEC play, is not going to bode well for Ole Miss. Not to mention that it's in Tiger Stadium in Death Valley, at night possibly. But I think Cole's right. I mean, we could be looking at definitely a freshman All-American type of running back and Leonard Fournette, but I think a lot of those names that we've talked about in several other of these podcasts that we don't know yet, that's going to give time for them to develop on, the defensive side of the ball for LSU especially. And, coming off a loss last season to Ole Miss, I just can't see them losing 2 in a row. So I've got them lose.
They shouldn't even make the trip. It's not even close.
Hey, you know what?
It's gonna get
We've
destroyed.
actually beaten LSU in the last 10 years.
Well, dude, we haven't beat them in 25, so
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
saying we're going to win. I'm just saying there's
talking
no way. The only thing you can do against LSU this year is run right up the middle on their defense. It's the only weakness that they have, and that's the one thing Ole Miss can't do. So
I agree with you. I agree.
But I think the revenge factor, there's no way LSU's going to let them win in Baton Rouge. Man, it's a 4-game losing streak. Man, they're breaking like crystal tailgate pieces and stuff, and man, it's bad in Oxford and the Grove right now.
All right, so you've got them at 4-4. I've got them at 6-2. All right, I'm just keeping up. I'm just trying to keep up. Okay.
Cole, I have them at 6-2 as well.
Me 3.
I'm getting ready to have them at 6-3 right now, though, because we're going to Auburn.
No, we're not going to Auburn. We're playing Auburn
Sorry.
at home. But I
Auburn
tend to agree with you.
my pick.
I tend to agree with you. Everybody's big talk is how we get we get a favorable schedule. We get Alabama and Auburn at home. I would love to play Auburn a little earlier in the year, like we did last year. I think if we had not have played them the week after Alabama, and we were still beaten up, then we played Auburn really well, just like Mississippi State played Auburn really well last year. But catching them, first week in November, and the offense is gonna be rolling by then. As long as Nick Marshall doesn't have, hadn't smoked too much weed, we should be good. So, and who knows, like, Blair, Shane, and Nick, all three of y'all talked about injuries maybe, mounting up, but it should be a really fun shootout kind of game. Auburn has a great defensive line. Ole Miss has a good defensive line. Both have really fun, fast offenses. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. We're coming back. Well, that'll probably be, if we're 6-2, like I'm thinking we're going to be, Auburn's probably going to be about 7-1, 6-2, maybe 8-0. It's going to be another big SEC game, and the home fans will be jacked for that game, no matter what. But I think that Auburn will squeeze it out like they always do. The curse of Tuberville. So we'll see.
Well, I can tell you that they won't be 8-0 because they already have a loss in Starkville on their resume. But I do think that Hugh Freeze, after 4 just god-awful losses and everybody's just falling off the train, there's going to be about 48,000 that show up to the game because they think everything's lost, and they're going to beat Auburn. It's going to be the damnedest thing you've ever seen. They're 5-4 now, man. 5-4.
I'm back on your wagon.
To me, this is a must-see game, just in my opinion, with these two high-powered offenses. I think, I don't know. I don't know what Auburn's defense is going to look like this year. I mean, everybody would tell you that it's going to be better, but there's still question marks on the outside. And if Bo Wallace can have a good game, I think this is definitely an upset in the making for Ole Miss. I can't give it to them just because of the number I want them at, by the time that we get done with the schedule. But like Cole said, Auburn will probably end up squeaking it out. And I don't know. I mean, if things are setting up like we believe the Iron Bowl is going to set up for this year, a loss to Ole Miss in November would be pretty devastating for Auburn. So I've got Ole Miss losing this game, but I think it's definitely going to be a fun one to watch. Could be a high-scoring affair, and if it's not, if you can somehow limit Auburn's offense, Ole Miss can pull it out.
Can we skip the next game?
I don't think there's any reason. I mean, unless Blair's going to give you guys another loss.
Blair, we're 5-5 now, or what are we now?
5-4
after President.
No, man, you got that. You beat the whole church, right?
Okay, all right. I'm just checking.
The best part about the Presbyterian game is that you get to hear the announcers multiple times say the Blue Hose because that is their mascot. So that's great.
And hopefully I get to hear Devontae Kincaid and Ryan Buchanan a lot as well. But we'll see.
All right.
Yeah, the Blue Hose. I like that. That's nice.
Blair, I'm going to let you start us off. Will they beat Arkansas?
It's in Little Rock. Don't forget.
Yeah, they're beating Arkansas. Arkansas is terrible, dude.
Brett Billum is actually going to be lining up.
They're all confused. They're speaking Hogneys and stuff. They don't even know what's going on. They're liable to go the wrong way. So
I'm giving them the win.
Yep, I've got them winning too.
No, we're beating Arkansas.
All right, Nick. Me and
you'll
7-4,
dude.
Jeez. Me and you'll get
8-3. 8-3 is pretty nice.
Hash it out. Nick, what do you think?
Let's go. Let's watch them. I said this in our Mississippi State preview, and other than the national championship and other,
we can move on. I'm sorry.
Otherwise, watching Alabama games, the Egg Bowl was one of the most exciting games for me last season, and I can't really. Oh my
God, it was awful. It was the worst game ever. But anyway, whatever.
But anyway, I think Dak Prescott's poised for a big year, and I know they're going to hash it out. But I've actually got Ole Miss losing this game. I think Mississippi State's going to bring home another one. So.
Yeah, I've got this. I've got Mississippi State keeping the egg. All right.
Wow.
You were on the same podcast as I was when I picked that.
I know. I like it.
All right, Blair, we'll let you go and let Cole have the final say.
Well, I know what Cole's going to say, but of course, I'm never going to say we're going to lose to Ole Miss. But the thing that I go back to, and I know Ole Miss will have a counter to it, is Dan Mullen has had Mississippi State ready to play 4 times out of the 5 years he's been there. And the one time that they were not there ready to play was in Oxford 2 years ago. In Oxford, and Ole Miss tried to hand us the football game first half, and we still couldn't do anything with it. And it's just one of those things where I left there. I just basically said I don't think Mullen will ever go back to Oxford where they're not ready to play. But when you get in the Egg Bowl, anything can happen. But I think it's an opportunity where Freeze let it slip. He could have buried Dan Mullen last year, and by doing it, by not State held on to 3 points on offense last year. With the block punt, it was really basically their whole offense. So I'll be interested to see. I like the upside of Dak Prescott over the temperament of Bo Wallace in that environment, and we'll see what it's going to be. I think the pressure is going to. I think when we get there, I think there's going to be more on Ole Miss from the standpoint of they can't let it be 5 out of 6. I think there's just going to be more riding on it for them, which could lead to them basically putting more on and actually pulling it away. But we'll see how it works out. Man, there's a long way till that happens, man. But hey, I got the egg right here, Cole. If you see it on there, yeah, okay. I'm just gonna let you know. That's what it looks like, right there.
All right, Cole.
Just out of curiosity, what did you pick Mississippi State's final record to be?
Me?
Yeah.
I believe 8-4.
You're winning the national championship? Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, I'll tell you, I disagree with all you people. Even if I thought there was a chance in Hades that Mississippi State was going to win, I would probably give them that. No, I'm just kidding. I think that I agree completely with Blair in most respects. I think it's a long way until we get to that game. Injuries are going to have a lot to do with it. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Ole Miss and Mississippi State, probably more on Ole Miss because it could be 5 out of 6 years. I agree completely that Freeze let one slip last year, didn't throw the ball downfield, didn't bury Dan Mullen, didn't, squash everything, made, the legacy of Dan Mullen and the hatred that Ole Miss fans have for him just grow more and more and more. I think that as much as I hate to say it, there's a lot more kids from the state of Mississippi on the Mississippi State roster. We've done a lot of recruiting on the outside of state. So a lot of these kids don't maybe last year didn't feel the same way Mississippi State did about how important it was. But I think they understand that now, and I think Hugh Freeze, understands how important it is to, put the pedal to the metal and do what you're good at and go all out. I think that we're going to have some things figured out by then. It's in front of our home crowd. We're going to have some chances if my projection is correct. We're going to be 8-3, with a chance to go to a pretty darn good bowl game. We've improved the last 2 years. 2 years in record. So going to 9-3 and beating Mississippi State would be great. So I think that we will get the win. I think that Bo Wallace and some of the other seniors, Bo's only played in 2 of these things, but last year was really, really, really hard on him. A bunch of people went to Twitter making fun of him, obviously, just like social media these days. Exactly. Hey, dude. That's tough, man. That's tough. So awesome. I think as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to come out. So I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be a great game. I really think that it's going to be one of the better games in the SEC this year because I truly feel Mississippi State and Ole Miss are going to be 2 of the best teams, not only in the West but the entire SEC. Both teams should probably have 7 or 8, at least 7 or 8 wins. When it comes down to it, barring any injuries. I think Ole Miss, if we, play our cards right, get a win where, get a couple wins where, swing games, we could be 9-3. And, have a great year, man. Have that breakout year everybody's talking about. I really, truly think we can have it.
So Cole's
good.
got a 9-3. Did you end up at 8-4, 7-5?
7-5.
I had him at 8-4. Nick, where'd you have him?
I was at 8-4.
See, the bad thing for Cole is that if they do lose the Egg Bowl, then his wife's happy.
That's right. I was just about to say that being on this podcast is a lot like being at the Powell house on Thanksgiving night. So, the only person in an Ole Miss shirt, and that includes the Rhodes graduate that doesn't know what to root for.
Oh man.
Well, this has been fun. This is what the round table's supposed to be right here. So, thanks Cole for being on. Blair, thanks for being the antagonist. Nick,
it was a blast, guys.
Thanks for coming in and adding this insight.
Always.
Wednesday night is our Vanderbilt podcast. Any other parting words from anybody before we wrap this thing up?
Vanderbilt is stupid for moving their game to LP Field.
We'll hope that you get to reiterate that fact to the Vanderbilt fans.
I hope David Williams is listening.
Well, we've got a couple that are going to join us Wednesday, so I want to get you on and let them hear that firsthand and see what their rebuttal is to that.
Absolutely.
But guys, thank you all so much for listening into this podcast. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. We're going to call this podcast done.